Welcome to Theology Savage. We considered sin as lawlessness, as we are told in the scriptures, 1 John 3:4. What I want to consider is the law. The law, of course, equals love. We know that it's the Ten Commandments, but what about those who don't have the Ten Commandments? Remember, only the Jews were given the Ten Commandments. Well, we read a rather interesting account in Romans chapter 2, verses 14 and following. Paul is making the case. What he's trying to do is show that both Jews, those who were quote-unquote the people of God in the Old Testament, and Gentiles, those who didn't have much to do with Israel's God, were both guilty before God and both needed to be saved and forgiven. And he says when Gentiles who do not have the law, in other words, Gentiles who don't have the Ten Commandments in the Ark of the Covenant, in their tabernacle, or traveling around with them, in the tabernacle or in the temple. In other words, they weren't given to Gentiles, Assyrians, Babylonians. They were given to the Jews on Mount Sinai in time and space. But he says when Gentiles who do not have the law by nature do what the law requires, he says they show basically that the work of the law is written on their heart. Maybe I should just read the passage. He says, "For when Gentiles who do not have the law by nature do what the law requires, they are a law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts accuse or even excuse them." That's quite the passage. In other words, he's saying that God, in a sense, has written his law, what he requires, remember, love, on the hearts of people. Now, of course, the full Lord law is perfect love toward God and neighbor. And what happens because of sin is that everybody worships. It's just being created in the image of God. That's what everyone was created to do. And people worship God. They worship themselves. They worship aspects of creation. And people do have a general sense of right and wrong. And how that comes about, at least according to what the scriptures are teaching, is that there's a law, in a sense, written on the human constitution, on the soul, in the mind. The heart isn't just the affections, but it's the seat of the desires and the volition and the thinking and the willing and the feeling. It's all those things. And God has, in a sense, written his law, what he requires on the heart. And that's why people have a general sense of right and wrong, good and quote-unquote bad. Now, that can become corrupted. Consciences can be seared. But Paul says here that the conscience bears witness to it. And either says, hey, good job, you helped that lady across the street, pat on the back, or bad job, you wounded your sibling, or you dishonored your parents, or you lied. And the conscience bears witness to that because it's on our human constitution, what is good. And so the law, really, when you think of righteousness, people have a general sense of right and wrong because of them being created in the image of God, and God not just creating people in his image, but revealing what he requires, which of course is love him and love others. Now the loving God aspect, of course, gets exchanged, and people worship primarily themselves. It may manifest itself in, of course, money or men or women or possessions, security, power. The fact is, though, everyone worships. And the thing that God does here is what he's trying to do, at least Paul's trying to do in Romans, is show that the law written on the heart, or even in the commands to the Jews, will never, ever, ever make anyone acceptable to God. And so we'll look at that passage tomorrow, Lord willing. Be blessed.